A month and a half after the retreat with the Battle Sisters, and 4 months after the assassination of El Arana, Jen returned to Panama City. She wasn't back out of respect for the former Central American director. She came because of her pride. Her people were warriors and hunters, one of the dominant species of the void. Yet, despite all her training, she had failed to find even the smallest clue about who had killed El Arana. No tracks, no witnesses, nothing. That failure still gnawed at her. The private jet touched down just before sunset and taxied toward the section reserved for corporate aircraft. Waiting outside the hangar stood April. Beside her sat a sleek blue BMW SUV. The moment Jen stepped off the jet, both women smiled. Not the forced smiles they wore around politicians or cabal officials. These were the smiles shared by sisters who had survived battles together. Rumor of an elite ghost assassin on Earth had not spread into the organization over the past several months. But no proof has come to life. One small favor, Jen thought with quiet relief. But the truth of a bloody civil war back home had come true. In her human disguise, Jen stood 6'4", with long blonde hair, athletic curves, and the appearance of a CrossFit athlete. To anyone passing by, she looked like an exceptionally tall woman. Only another hunter would notice the way she moved. Every step carried the balance and confidence of a predator. As they drove through Panama City toward one of the wealthy gated communities overlooking Panama Bay, they spent most of the trip catching up on everything except work. After a hot meal and several hours of rest, the two Battle Sisters relaxed in April's living room. The mansion had been built for someone far larger than any human. In her natural form, April stood 8 feet tall with broad shoulders, powerful muscles, gray skin, blonde hair, glowing red eyes, and the presence of a warrior queen. Yet when she wasn't working, she preferred blue jeans, cowboy boots, western shirts, and her favorite cowboy hat. Jen laughed more than once, saying April looked more like a ranch owner than one of the most powerful directors in the cabal. Jen herself preferred comfort, sports bras, athletic pants, and anything that allowed her to move freely. Her hunting gear rested nearby, 2 massive daggers that looked like short swords by human standards. April leaned back with a grin. "So, Miss Sherlock Holmes." Jen immediately tossed a couch pillow across the room. It hit April square in the chest. "Oh, very funny," April laughed. "Fine, Miss Watson." That was enough to send both of them laughing. After the laughter faded, April asked, "You're really going back into the jungle?" Jen nodded. "My pride won't let this go." "You still think you'll find something after 4 months?" "I have to know." April's smile faded into concern. "Just be careful." "I will. I'm serious, Jen." "I know." Before leaving, Jen packed a full-size hiking backpack, extra batteries, food, water, her cell phone in watertight bag. Then she added a pair of hiking boots, extra fresh socks, an oversized t-shirt, a ball cap, and sunglasses. April watched her pack. Good thinking. "If I run into people, I'd rather not scare them." Jen grinned. "No reason to introduce myself as a 7-foot wolf warrior standing on 2 legs." April couldn't help laughing. "I appreciate that. I can do without paperwork that would cause." Both laugh at the joke. With bottled water and warm cookies between them, they sat in comfortable silence for several minutes. Finally, Jen broke it. "Did you ever call home?" The question lingered in the room. April stared out the window before answering. "No." Her voice grew quieter. Not while the war is still going. It still doesn't feel right, Jen nodded. I know. I was lucky enough to hear from my pack. I'm glad you did. You should call yours. I think I will this weekend. I hope you do. After another long silence, Jen asked, How's being director? April sighed. I hate every minute of it, Jen smiled. But you're still better than El Arana. That's a pretty low bar. It is. Both women chuckled. April became serious again. The director thinks there's a good chance he'll merge my territory with the southern half of South America and split the workload. I hope he does. So do I, Jen smirked. I'll gladly take him over the director next to your territory. April laughed. The one you almost punched? He deserved it. The jerk. April slid the plate toward Jen. You get the last 2 cookies. Jen smiled. Thanks. You'll need them. By 9 o'clock that evening, darkness had settled over Panama. Jen stepped through the sliding glass doors into April's beautifully maintained backyard. The tropical air wrapped around her like a warm blanket, while the humidity clung to everything beneath the star-filled sky. Keeping to the shadows, she raised her left arm. The device on her wrist looked like a cross between a smartwatch and a military dive computer. She spoke several commands in her native language. The device answered with a soft electronic hum. Nano-camouflage deactivating. 10 seconds. Jen took a slow breath. 3, 2, 1. Her human disguise dissolved. Bones shifted. Muscles expanded. Golden fur spread across her body. Within seconds, the tall blonde woman was gone. In her place stood a 7'4" wolf warrior weighing nearly 350 pounds of solid muscle. Jen stood quietly, letting the transformation finish. The real Jen had returned. Every instinct came rushing back. Her ears rotated independently as sounds flooded in from every direction. Her powerful nose sorted thousands of scents with effortless clarity. Every muscle felt stronger, faster, and more alive than it had only moments before. She closed her eyes and drew one slow, deep breath. A wide grin spread across her muzzle. I'm back in action, she whispered to herself. She let out a low, satisfied growl. And I love it. Then the world came alive. A rat darted nearly half a mile away. Leaves rustled beneath the feet of a capybara. Somewhere deeper in the jungle, a jaguar slipped silently through the undergrowth. A snake that had recently fed left behind a faint scent trail. Smoke drifted from an outdoor cooking fire nearly 3 miles away. Every sound, every scent, every heartbeat of the jungle unfolded before her with perfect clarity. She slowly opened her amber gold predator eyes. To her, the jungle wasn't dark. It looked like late evening beneath a cloudy sky. Every tree, every vine, every game trail, perfectly clear. A tiny voice suddenly whispered from a nearby security camera. Don't get cocky out there. Jen immediately spotted the hidden camera. She looked straight at it and stuck her tongue out. 60 yards away, April burst into laughter as she watched from her home office security monitor. Still a goofball, April said, shaking her head with a smile. Jen crouched, then exploded upward. She cleared the 10-foot brick wall with ease, landed silently on the running trail. With another effortless leap, she sailed over the barbed wire security fence designed to keep predators out. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was the biggest predator in the jungle. Without another sound, Jen disappeared into the darkness. Within seconds, only silence remained. The hunt had begun. The Panama jungle greeted Jen the way a new classroom greets a student on the first day, full of unfamiliar sights, sounds, and lessons waiting to be learned. She covered more than 2 miles in only a few minutes before finally slowing beside a narrow creek winding through a small clearing beneath towering trees. Standing quietly, she let her breathing settle. The rush of the transformation slowly faded, replaced by the calm focus of an experienced hunter. Even at her normal operating level, Jen knew she was still an apex predator. Few creatures in the void could challenge her, and so far nothing on Earth had convinced her otherwise. Then April's voice drifted through her thoughts. "Don't get cocky out there." Jen smiled to herself. "Yeah, I heard you." She took a slow breath and looked into the endless jungle. Confidence was a strength. Overconfidence got warriors killed. Her species ranked among the greatest hunters in the void. But history had taught a painful lesson. More than once the other hunter species have battled and fallen to the Emperor's elite ghost assassins. Jen had no reason to believe one of them was hiding on Earth. Still, the lesson remained. Respect every hunt. She settled into an easy pace along a narrow game trail. Warm evening air mixed with the cooling night, creating long ribbons of mist that drifted beneath the jungle canopy. As Jen moved through the forest, the jungle changed around her. Frogs stopped calling. Birds tucked themselves deeper into the trees. Small animals froze until she passed. The jungle knew a predator was hunting. Jen couldn't help smiling. This was home. The journey to Elarana's villa took longer than she expected. The jungle didn't care how strong she was. Towering vines blocked entire sections of forest. Ancient trees forced her to backtrack more than once because her 7'4" frame simply wouldn't fit through the tangled growth. She laughed the first time it happened. The third time, not so much. Along the way, she caught the scent of armed men, nearly 2 miles before she ever saw them. Drug traffickers. Their sweat, cheap cigarettes, diesel fuel, and unwashed clothes carried easily through the humid air. Jen quietly slipped around them without being seen. A grin spread across her muzzle. April would probably kill me if I jumped down there with a bucket of hot water and a few bars of soap. The thought nearly made her laugh. After 2 full days, she finally reached Elarana's villa. Using the security codes April had provided, Jen quietly disabled the perimeter defenses before effortlessly clearing the outer wall. She slipped through a side glass door and immediately became still. Eyes closed, ears turning, nose testing every scent. She listened to the rhythm of the house. Nothing. No hidden heartbeat, no unfamiliar scent, no movement, no answers. Satisfied, she cleaned up, found a place to sleep, and prepared to begin a careful search the following morning. And 1 week later, Jen sat on the living room floor with her back against the wall, knees drawn close, staring silently across the empty room. She was angry, not at anyone else, at herself. She had made too many rookie mistakes. She got cocky and paid for it. April had quietly arranged for one of the Cabal's private medical teams to patch her up. Now all she had to do was heal. Her fingers brushed the bandage covering her shoulder. I shouldn't have tried to fight those traffickers. Not after everything else. Her hand moved to the long claw marks stretching across her side. The jaguar had come out of nowhere. Even with all her speed, it had nearly opened her up before she reacted. Then there was the crocodile. She had landed on what looked like the perfect sandbar. Seconds later, the water next to sandbar exploded. Only instinct had saved her from becoming dinner. Jen let out a slow breath. Earth wasn't the void. Earth played by its own rules. Her phone buzzed. Orsis. Jen smiled and opened the message. "How's the hunt going?" she typed back. "Got cocky, almost paid for it. Close call with a jaguar. Even closer with a crocodile." 5 minutes later, another message appeared. "I talked to one of the guys at work. He spent time training in the Central American jungle. He said the jungle has its own rules. Anything that comes to the water is on a crocodile's dinner menu." Jen laughed, learning that the hard way. Another message arrived almost immediately. "You're still alive, old friend. Maybe the three of us, you, me, and Felicia, need to spend more time improving our hunting and tracking skills. We won't always have April and Nat around to rescue us." Jen smiled. "You're probably right. Thanks. Get some rest? You too." Jen set the phone down and looked out the window. April had been right. Don't get cocky. She only had 3 weeks left to find answers. Over the next 3 days, she rested while her injuries slowly healed. Late that afternoon, Jen sat cross-legged on the villa's second-floor balcony, quietly meditating. A faint rhythmic thump drifted across the jungle. Rotor blades. Her ears twitched. The sound was still nearly 4 miles away. Jen slowly opened one eye. "Oh, great," she sighed. "And here I thought today was going to be peaceful." The helicopter drew closer. Then her nose caught 2 familiar scents. Wraith hunters. And Orsis. Jen groaned. "My lucky day." She leaned back in her chair. "If Orsis is bringing wraith hunters." She closed her eyes for a moment. Then Natalie approved this. Unlike April, Natalie held a higher position within the Cabal. If she had authorized this visit, Jen wasn't getting out of whatever was coming. "Yep," she muttered. "This is what I get for getting cocky." She stood and headed toward the villa's landing pad. The UH-1, Huey broke through the treetops carrying a large cargo net beneath it. As it hovered overhead, Jen spotted Orsis standing in the open doorway, grinning and waving enthusiastically. The helicopter released the cargo onto the landing pad before touching down 30 yards away. The side door slid open. 10 wraith hunters stepped out first. Without a word, they immediately began unloading heavy crates. As Orsis walked past them, each hunter paused long enough to give her a respectful nod before returning to work. Jen noticed. Orsis stood just over 7 feet tall with a lean, athletic build that moved with surprising grace. Her crimson skin was crossed by faded yellow scars that stood out like old lightning bolts, silent reminders of battles she had survived across countless worlds. Golden eyes sparkled with amusement beneath dark braided hair. Across her back rested a massive double-tipped hunting spear nearly as tall as she was. The weapon's dark, alien metal bore countless scratches from years of hard use. It wasn't ceremonial. It had earned every mark. Despite her relaxed smile, Orsis was widely respected among the Battle Sisters as one of their finest hunters and tracking instructors. If anyone could teach Jen how to master Earth's jungles, it was her. The moment Orsis reached Jen, her cheerful grin softened into genuine concern. "Are you really okay?" Jen smiled. "I was." She looked toward the crates. "Until you showed up with wraith hunters and enough equipment to completely ruin my next 2 weeks." Orsis burst into laughter. Oh, we're going to have fun. She looked Jen over from head to toe. You look terrible. Thanks. Good. Jen blinked. Good? Makes my job easier. Then Orsis became serious. Now tell me exactly what happened. For the next several minutes, Jen walked her through every mistake. The traffickers, the jaguar, the crocodile, every poor decision. Orsis listened without interrupting. When Jen finally finished, Orsis nodded once. The jungle already started teaching you. So tomorrow, she smiled again, I finish the lesson. Jen looked toward the wraith hunters. What are they for? Orsis' grin widened. That's the fun part, she pointed toward the jungle. Your job is simple. Reach the finish point. Without being seen, Jen folded her arms. And if they spot me, you start over, and again, until you stop thinking like the strongest hunter, and start thinking like prey. Jen looked at the 10 wraith hunters, then back at Orsis. Natalie's idea? Orsis laughed. Oh, absolutely. And she added a few extra surprises. Jen rubbed her forehead. How long? 12 days. Jen sighed dramatically. I liked you better over text. The first day of training humbled her. The second nearly exhausted her. By the end of the first week, Jen finally stopped relying on speed alone. She learned patience, timing, discipline. She learned to listen before moving, to let the jungle reveal its secrets instead of forcing her way through them. For 12 days, the wraith hunters tracked her relentlessly. Every mistake meant starting over. Every success had to be earned. Slowly, Jen became something more dangerous. Not because she was stronger, because she had become smarter. The results didn't take long to appear. One night, a cartel guard wandered too far away from his campfire. A massive claw suddenly covered his mouth. His rifle slipped from his hands. Before anyone could make a sound, the jungle swallowed him. 20 minutes later, the remaining guards argued over where their friend had gone. One by one, they disappeared into the darkness. Not a single gunshot echoed through the jungle. Only silence remained. 4 days later, Jen quietly sabotaged another cartel operation. Boats slowly filled with water. Weapons disappeared. Money vanished. The smugglers blamed one another until the entire camp erupted into shouting. Watching from high in the trees, Jen couldn't help smiling. Her hunting skills had improved, but she still had more to learn. The jungle was finally beginning to accept her, and somewhere ahead, the answers she had come searching for were still waiting. 14 days left into her 3-week hunt, Jen finally felt at peace with the jungle. She had stopped trying to conquer it. Instead, she had learned to become part of it. Late that evening, she returned to El Arana's villa, planning to spend the night before continuing her search the next morning. As she stepped into the quiet house, something made her stop. A low growl, barely louder than a whisper. Jen froze. Her ears rotated toward the sound. Silence. She waited. 1 minute, 5 minutes. Nothing. She slowly searched the main floor, moving from room to room with practiced patience. Nothing. She had almost convinced herself she imagined it. Then, the growl came again. Slightly louder this time. It seemed to come from below her feet. The wine cellar, she whispered. Jen quietly descended the stairs. The wine cellar was exactly as she remembered it. Rows of expensive wine bottles, wooden racks, dust, silence. She searched every corner, every shelf, every shadow. Nothing. She started toward the stairs when something caught her eye. A tiny piece of brass, barely visible beneath the last stack of wine barrels. Anyone else would have walked right past it. Jen crouched and carefully picked it up with the tip of one retractable claw. A shell casing. She turned it over in her hand. 10 millimeters. 180 grain. Her amber eyes narrowed. "What are you doing down here? And how did we miss you the first time?" She tapped one of the nearby barrels. Instead of the dull thud she expected, it sounded hollow. Jen placed both hands against the stacked barrels and pushed. With a deep, grinding rumble, the entire section slid sideways. Cold air drifted from the darkness beyond. A narrow stone passage stretched into the earth. Red emergency lights glowed faintly along the ceiling. Jen stared into the opening. "So, that's where you've been hiding." She quietly replaced the shell casing in one of her belt pouches before heading upstairs. 30 minutes later, she returned carrying her backpack and twin daggers. She wasn't expecting a fight, but experience had taught her to never walk into the unknown unprepared. Taking one final look behind her, she stepped into the passage. The hidden doorway silently closed behind her. The temperature dropped almost immediately. The air felt fresh. Too fresh. Someone had engineered airflow through the tunnel. Jen moved slowly. Every instinct remained on full alert. The stone walls absorbed nearly every sound. Why did he have red lights in the tunnel? Even her footsteps seemed strangely muted. 10 feet in, she felt the familiar warning buzz deep inside her instincts. Not fear, not yet, just wrong. She slowed even more, one careful step at a time, watching, listening, smelling. Every few yards she paused. The tunnel bent gently to the right. 40 yards ahead, another passage branched off to the left. Jen stopped. Cool air drifted from the side tunnel. She closed her eyes. Water, running water. Then, another scent. Humans. Old, but still there. She quietly marked the location in her memory before continuing down the main tunnel. A few seconds later, she rounded the next corner and stopped cold. The room beyond looked as though a battle had exploded inside it. More than a dozen spent shell casings littered the stone floor. Deep claw marks scarred the walls. Dark blood stained the ground. 2 enormous spider-like legs had been ripped completely from something powerful enough to punch through concrete. Yet, there was no body. Only a blood trail leading back toward the entrance. Jen slowly crouched. Nothing about this made sense. Someone had fought here, someone had survived, and whatever had happened, it had been violent. She stood quietly for nearly a minute. Finally, she shook her head. "This one's above my pay grade." April and the director needed to see this. She wasn't about to disturb a crime scene that might answer more questions than she could. Turning around, she headed back to the side passage. 20 yards in, the ceiling lowered enough that Jen was forced onto all fours. A cool breeze brushed against her face. Daylight. She crawled through the medium-size opening and emerged inside a rocky cave. For several seconds, she simply stood there. What the hell is going on? Without wasting another second, she raised her left arm and checked the navigation display on her wrist. Distance from El Arana's villa, 30 miles. Distance from April's home, 15 miles. Jen slowly turned and stared back into the cave. Her mind raced, then it finally clicked. El Arana had a secret portal, she whispered. That's how he escaped. She looked back toward the cave entrance. No wonder no one ever found his body. A low growl escaped her throat. We've all been searching the wrong area. Everything she had learned over the past 3 weeks suddenly fit together. The missing tracks, the complete lack of scent, the dead ends. None of it had been a failure on the investigators' part. They had simply been looking in the wrong place. Jen spent nearly 20 minutes searching every inch of the cave. No footprints, no scent, no claw marks, no droppings, nothing. It was as if no living creature had entered the cave since the day El Arana disappeared. She looked out into the jungle. What in the world is going on? Only silence answered her. According to her navigation display, a small fishing village lay roughly 5 miles away. Jen adjusted her backpack. Might as well start there. She slipped into the jungle, moving steadily toward the village. High above, hidden among the thick jungle canopy, 2 icy blue eyes silently watched her disappear through the trees. They never blinked. Several long seconds passed. Then, they quietly vanished. Jen moved steadily through the jungle until she reached a ridge overlooking the main road leading into the fishing village. She knelt beneath the trees and checked the display on her wrist. A small tourist village, busy during the winter months, quiet this time of year. She watched people moving through the streets for nearly 15 minutes before making her decision. With a few taps on her wrist device, her nano-camouflage activated once more. Golden fur disappeared. Her muzzle disappeared. Within seconds, the 7'4" wolf warrior had become the tall blonde woman once again. She slipped on her hiking boots, pulled on an oversized t-shirt, adjusted her ball cap, and tucked her sunglasses onto her face. Now, she looked like another tourist. For nearly 2 hours she wandered through the village. She bought bottled water, picked up a few snacks, stopped to admire handmade carvings from a local vendor, asked simple questions, listened far more than she spoke. Nothing. No one mentioned El Arana. No one mentioned strange visitors. Just as she was beginning to think the trip had been another dead end, she caught movement from the corner of her eye. Someone was watching her. Jen never looked directly toward the movement. Instead, she continued browsing like any curious tourist. For the next 20 minutes, the two of them played a quiet game of cat and mouse. Eventually, Jen won. She suddenly turned down a narrow side street before silently doubling back. A startled gasp came from behind her. She smiled. A boy, maybe 13 years old. His eyes grew wide as he looked up at the unusually tall blonde woman. Jen knelt until they were almost eye level. Her voice remained calm and gentle. "Can I help you?" The boy stared at her for several seconds before speaking hesitant English. "Are you April?" Jen blinked. For the second time that day, she was completely caught off guard. "How do you know, April?" The boy immediately became nervous and started backing away. Jen slowly raised one hand. "Wait. My name is Jen. April is my friend." Carefully, she removed her phone and opened a picture of herself, standing beside April. The boy's eyes immediately lit up. He pointed at April's picture. "Yes, that woman. Mr. Ramirez said she would come." Jen's heartbeat quickened. "What did he tell you?" The boy looked around to make sure no one was listening. "He was hurt. Very hurt. He asked me to help him." Jen remained perfectly still. She didn't interrupt. She simply listened. "I found him near the waterfall. He was scared. He said bad men were looking for him. He gave me his phone. He told me to hide it. He said," the boy looked directly into Jen's eyes, "give it only to April. He said she would come someday." Jen felt a chill run down her spine. He paid me $300. He told me not to come back until the next morning. I never saw him again. Jen nodded slowly. You did exactly what he asked. The boy smiled proudly. I promised. Do you still have the phone? Yes. Follow me. A few minutes later, they arrived at a small wooden house near the edge of the village. Even before the door opened, Jen could smell wood smoke, fresh fish, simple cooking, and something else. Love. For reasons she couldn't explain, that single scent sent a tiny crack through the armor around her heart. It was a feeling she hadn't allowed herself to experience in a very long time. A family. The boy disappeared inside. A minute later he returned carrying a small cloth bag. Inside rested a fairly new cell phone. There is something else, he said. He held up an old digital camera. Before he could ask, Jen smiled. You want a picture together? The boy nodded enthusiastically. After taking the picture, Jen thanked him. No. The boy shook his head. Thank you. Jen tucked the phone safely into her backpack. After buying fresh food and water for the hike back, she disappeared into the jungle. Around 2 o'clock the following morning, she quietly cleared the walls surrounding April's estate. April, already in her void form, stood waiting beside the backyard sliding glass door. One look at Jen's face and it told her everything. You found something. Jen nodded. I think we finally have our first real clue. Get cleaned up first, April said, and get some rest. I'll charge the phone if it needs it. 8 o'clock that evening. Both women sat inside April's secure office, the phone connected to a laptop. Neither spoke. The video began. El Arana appeared at the screen. He looked exhausted, covered in blood. He staggered toward a tree, an open field in the jungle, a drop to one knee. Then he changed into his true void form, instead of the confident director they both remembered. They saw a frightened man pacing in circles like a trapped animal. Every few seconds he looked over his shoulder, listening, waiting, hoping. Then he froze. His eyes widened. He looked towards something beyond the camera. His breathing stopped. The camera tilted. For the briefest instant, a pair of armored legs shimmered into existence, as though someone invisible had taken a single step forward. Then, the recording ended. The phone just died. Silence filled the room. Jen slowly turned toward April. April looked back at her. Neither woman spoke. They didn't have to. One thought crossed both their minds. Oh, hell. Hello, everyone. Thanks for watching Chapter 6. With Jen's hunt for answers, please like, subscribe, share, and comments. Coming soon, Chapter 7. And thanks again.